Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another session of our live seminar series brought to you by Agilent Technologies. My name is Marcellus Bronner, and I'll be your moderator for today's webcast titled, Your LTE Devices Need to Pass Conformance Tests, Now What? Our presenter today is Angel Romero. Angel began his career in 1999 as a software developer for cable television test applications. He later took on responsibility for the development of test procedures and tools for various communication technologies, analog and digital television, Wi-Fi, and public switching terminal networks, and has been an active participant in forums such as Bluetooth SIG, EPC Global, and NFC. Today, he is the product manager for Agilent's LTE conformance test systems and participates in the certification and validation working groups at the GCF and PTCRB consortiums. Angel is based in Malaga, Spain. We'll begin our webcast in just a moment, but first a little bit about the process. Angel will answer questions at the end of his presentation. For you to participate in the Q&A session, please enter your questions at any time in the Q&A window on the lower right corner. Be sure to select all panelists before sending the question. After the seminar and within a couple of days, you'll receive an email with a link to a copy of the slides along with the recording of this event. We do have a lot of people on the line with us today, so I apologize in advance if we don't get to all of your questions. But don't worry, if we run out of time, we'll respond to the remaining questions in email. Last but not least, we ask you to take a moment to fill out the short feedback form that will appear when you close the WebEx session. And now I will turn the floor over to Angel. Welcome, Angel.
Thank you, Marcellus. Hello, everyone. My name is Angel Romero, and I work in product marketing at Agilent Technologies. Let's have a look into the agenda for this webcast. In the first section, we will review some basic concepts related to conformance testing. In the second part, we are going to focus in the specific conformance and certification requirements for LTE technology. In the third section, we will briefly go through the basics of operator acceptance test. Finally, in the last part of this webcast, we are going to review main current challenges of LTE testing of user equipment. We will focus on LTE radio frequency test requirements. We will review also a couple of sample test cases and how these can be customized beyond the requirements defined in the 3GPP standards. And we will finish with an overview of probably one of the hottest topics in LTE nowadays, which is LTE Advanced Carrier Aggregation Tests. Let's begin reviewing some basic conformance testing concepts. So what does conformance test really mean? A conformance test process is a methodology defined to verify whether a product implemented based on a particular standard complies with all the specific requirements defined in such a standard. Usually, and in a different way compared with, for instance, interoperability testing, in which the equipment under test is exercised against another device, conformance tests are performed by verifying the specific test requirements against a conformance test platform, which, as well, has to fulfill certain requirements itself. Conformance tests are usually built around three main concepts. First, the test specifications in which the conformance tests are going to be based. These specs compile a set of test cases defining for each of them their test purpose, test condition, test parameters, and pass-fail verdict criteria, among other information. Second, the test laboratories, which after a predefined accreditation process are the designated entities recognized to perform conformance testing. These labs could be independent third-party labs or even an internal lab owned by the device manufacturer. And third, the conformance test platforms, which are basically a set of tools and instruments that have been officially recognized or validated to perform a specific set of conformance test cases. So next question to address is when to perform conformance tests. Along the development chain of a particular device, there are many different tasks and processes, some of them involving verification and testing activities. In particular, after the design verification phase, in which several types of functional and parametric verification tasks are performed, the manufacturer usually starts to exercise the user equipment against the applicable standards, which could be considered as pre-conformance and conformance phases, and subsequently submit the device to an accredited test laboratory in order to go through the required and desired certification processes. As part of this standard validation process, some certification bodies require running other type of tests beyond the conformance testing scope, such as interoperability testing. To give you an example, could be Wi-Fi Alliance nowadays. In the previous slide, I mentioned that a manufacturer may choose which particular certification processes will go through. This is because there are two main types of conformance tests. Those imposed by regional authorities, such as FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, or the CE mark, administered by the European Commission, which are mandatory to pass in order to put a product into the market. The other type are optional certification schemes managed by industry certification bodies and normally associated with a specific mark or logo, and are very much encouraged to run in order to reach a minimum level of performance and satisfy interoperability aspects with other similar devices. And some examples could be the Bluetooth SIG, NFC Forum, or GCF and PTCRB. So once we have reviewed some very basic conformance concepts, let's focus in LTE technology in particular and its conformance and certification requirements. So LTE specifications and test specifications are defined by different groups inside the 3GPP organization. Besides and cooperating with 3GPP, ETSI dedicates a specific task force, is TF160, for developing the TTCN3 code for the LTE protocol test. These 3GPP tests are taken by the industry certification forums, such as GCF and PTCRB, in order to define their certification programs. And that includes validation of test platforms, accreditation of test laboratories, priorities of the test cases based in the network operators' plans, etc. Let's have a deeper look into the activities managed by these certification bodies in preparation for the certification of LTE devices. As mentioned in previous slides, GCF and PTCRB adopt the specifications developed by the 3GPP, but do not take the overall set of tests and just prioritize a group of them based on network operators' deployment plans. In GCF, the selected and prioritized list of test cases are compiled into some kind of documents called work items, and in PTCRB, in another type of documents called RFT or request for testing. Later, we will see some examples specifically for LTE of these compilations. Once that the test cases scope has been determined, the test systems vendor implement the required test cases on their test platforms and select one or several laboratories, recognized laboratories, in order to validate the implementation of these test cases against actual reference devices. And normally there are rules that the number of devices can be 1 or 2, but normally the usual number is 2 reference devices for validation. Once the validation has finished, the laboratory submits a validation report to GCF and PTCRB for official approval. And if this approval is achieved, the test system in particular gets recognized for being used in certification for the particular set of test cases, and the tests themselves become mandatory to be passed by a device under test in the particular certification scheme. Let's have a look into the type of tests and the different 3GPP specifications more popular in LTE. The conformance testing of mobile devices normally comprise the following type of tests: RF tests that essentially verify the receiver and transmitter performance of the UE, of the user equipment; RRM tests that check the behavior of the UE when connecting to the network and exercise scenarios for cell reselections, handovers, timing, etc. Protocol tests that basically verify the signaling procedures between the UE and the network at different layers. In terms of the main LTE-related specifications for conformance testing, there are mainly three sets of specs. We have the 36508, covering common UE conformance test conditions, includes aspects such as UE-defined test mode, test frequencies for each band, etc. The specifically related to RF and RRM conformance testing aspects, these are the 36521 from document number 1 to document number 3. That includes the RF and RRM test cases. The RF are in the -1 and the RRM are in -3. And also the implementation conformance statements for these tests, which is basically those test cases that are applicable based in the features supported by the implementation under test. And then we have another group that are the one focusing UE signaling or protocol tests, which are the 36523-1, and -2, and -3. That includes, respectively, the protocol test cases, the ICS, the implementation conformance statements, and the abstract test suite, the ATS, written in TT3N3. Let's go deeper into both GCF and PTCF activities. GCF, the Global Certification Forum, is basically managed by GCF members, which usually are operators, manufacturers, labs, and test equipment vendors. Inside GCF, there are several groups taking care of different testing aspects, such as conformance and interoperability. This is the CAG. The field trial test. This is the FTAG. And performance test. This is the PAG. In GCF, as we have seen before, the conformance test cases developed by the 3GPP are grouped in word items. Also, inside each word items, they split these word items depending on the different LTE bands, because each particular bands may have different requirements. And some examples of word items, as you see in the slides, are word items 80 and 90 for RF release H requirements, 81, 82, 91, and 92 for protocol test cases, or 150 for release 9 requirements, or the recently added 162 for carrier aggregation word items. Besides, GCF defines what is called the certification entry criteria, the CEC, for a word item or group of or interrelated word items. This CEC is based in two main conditions or requirements that have to be fulfilled before a group of test cases are set as mandatory for certification. The two main conditions are the TPAC, or Test Platform Approval Criteria, by which a specific test system reaches 13 predefined threshold of validated test cases in the word item. Normally, it's 80% for LTE, although in the latest release 9 word items has been reduced to down to a 50%, and I think in the UMTS was a 90%, so it can be different. And the other condition is that for a specific band, a pilot network deployment must already exist. So the operators that is introducing the particular band into GCF must declare that they have a network or a pilot network deployment already in place in order for the certification to start. Let's talk about the certification database. This is really important for a manufacturer that wants to know exactly which are the requirements and test cases that have to pass for certification. So when a GCF member wants to check whether a test case is mandatory for certification, if this has been already validated or in which test platform they have been validated, the GCF database has to be checked. The table in the slide basically shows a snapshot of the GCF database in which all the different groups of conformant test cases are listed. So it's a huge database that all the different GSM, UMTS, LTE test cases are included. And in the example, you can see for every single test case that in which what item is contained, also the band applicability for the particular test case, the status or the category of every test case for every single band, in which test platform the test case has been validated. So each test platform is uniquely identified by a test platform number. For example, category A means that this test case for this particular band is mandatory for certification, and category B means that this case has not been validated by any test platform and is open for validation and cannot be included yet in the certification scheme. So thanks to this database, which is accessible by every member, as I mentioned, the status of every test case can be checked. And also PTCRB has a similar database available too for members. So now let's have a brief look into the PTCRB organization. PTCRB provides a certification network for different radio access technologies for North American operators mainly. As mentioned in previous slides, the group of test cases are introduced, taken from the specific 3GPP test specs into RFTs, request for testing documents. There is a group in PTCRB called PVG, the validation group, reviewing all the existing RFTs in every PVG members meeting that normally happens every 3-4 months in a year. And some examples of current RFTs for LTE are the RFT 76, which cover LTE release H conformant test cases, the 99, that includes the latest release 9 enhancements, or the very recent introduced 103 that compiles the LTE carrier aggregation test cases. Finally, let's have a look into the latest status of GCF and PTCRB activities. The current main work in both forums is around LTE Release H and Release 9 certification requirements. In GCF, all LTE bands are currently activated for Release H, except for the band 12 and band 14. That basically means, as I mentioned in previous slide, that devices supporting the other bands that are activated have to go for certification for the particular bands if they support the particular bands. Release 9 validation for test cases has started very recently this year, early this year. New word items have been recently defined for carrier aggregation. These are word items 462 in GCF and the RFT 103 for carrier aggregation. This is in PTCRB, as I mentioned. And the validation for these carrier aggregation test cases are expected by next PVG 61 meeting, which is actually next week, and CAG 36, which is in October timeframe. So just one more slide to reflect for every type of conformant test cases, RF, RRM, and protocol, how Agilent LTE conformant test platforms are identified in GCF and PTCRB forums. So for LTE RF test cases, the Agilent validated test platform is the T4010S, and its number is TP95. For LTE RRM test cases, this is the Agilent T4020S, and the number is TP112. And for protocol tests, the test platform is the Agilent T4110S, and its number is the TP94. So if you go into either GCF or PTCRB database and you look for validated test platform, you will see in many test cases these TP names. So in previous section, we have reviewed so far GCF and PTCRB LTE industry certification schemes, which are common for a group of operators, members of these organizations, But certain carriers have defined a set of additional test requirements which go beyond the scope of the GCF and PTCRB conformance framework. The main reason behind the need of establishing further test requirements is essentially due to the proliferation of much more complex mobile devices, which at the end of the day has increased the need in many operators of performing deeper testing before they offer these devices to their subscribers. It is clear their main goal is to meet customer expectations for a much wider range of features, capabilities, and network services. The operator test plans are designed to exercise and replicate their specific network conditions, and in most of the cases, emulating high-stress scenarios. Typical type of tests requested by operator are regulatory requirements, which basically test RF, EMC, safety tests according to the different country standards. Conformance, that basically tests against the specific standards, can be RF, protocol, SIM requirements are very important as well for operators, but not necessarily have to be exactly the same requirements that I have in the 3GPP, so they might extend these requirements as well. Interoperability tests that check compatibility between devices and also between the devices and the network. Functional tests that verifies functionalities and features of the mobile devices. User experience, that there are quality tests according to user expectations. And reliability, that basically check string tests, endurance, and also how the device behaves in different climatic or environmental conditions. So in previous sections, we have reviewed conformance testing concepts, specific LTE certification schemes, and we briefly talked about operator acceptance tests. Along the next section, which is the core part of the webcast, we are going to review the current challenges of LTE UE testing, and in particular review current LTE RF test requirements from release 8 up to release 11, including LTE advanced carrier aggregation tests. So let's have a look into the different challenges of LTE UE testing. So compared with previous radio access technologies such as 2G or 3G, LTE introduces quite a few new challenges from the UE testing perspective. One of the most critical ones is the big amount of new bands defined for LTE. This is around 27 FDD bands and 12 TDD bands. Although by now, not all of them are planned to be deployed by operators and therefore get inside any certification scheme. In any case, GCF currently covers 21 bands and PTCRB only 10 bands. Another important test challenge is the use of multiple subcarriers and the several possible bandwidths that can be used in both the downlink and the uplink. This fact increases considerably the number of combinations of parameters to be tested. So as you can see in the slide, this has been extracted from the test specification. For every band, there are several bandwidth combinations that have to be tested for the different test cases. Besides the two mentioned ones, very related to frequency spectrum efficiency, there are other challenges when testing LTE devices, such as the need of emulating real network conditions, exercising the device under test under these scenarios. This basically requires the integration of fading simulators and noise generators in the LTE test systems. In particular, there are a set of test cases which perform the same measurements but under different channel emulation profiles. We will see that later on. Another challenge is based in the capabilities of the mobile device to support other radio access technologies such as 2G, 3G, or CDMA 2000. Since there are specific LTE test cases that exercise the ability of the mobile to switch between cells, supporting these different radio access technologies. Finally, and as an obvious challenge, testing all these combinations of bands, frequencies, bandwidths with different environmental emulated conditions, channel profile, etc., increase considerably the testing time spent to execute them. These are just some few, or I would say the main challenges for LTE UE testing. There are few others. For example, I can highlight others like how fast the LTE technology is changing and evolving, that somehow for test equipment manufacturers and test laboratories, they need to keep up to speed with all the latest enhancements in order to offer the industry with testing capabilities. Let's focus in LTE RF testing. So in terms of LTE RF test requirements, the two main 3GPP specifications related are the 36101, which defines the core requirements for an LTE user equipment, and the already mentioned in previous slides, the 36521-1, which contains the measurement procedures and test conditions for the RF conformance test cases, based in the previous core spec, the 36101. In the test spec, 4 different sets of tests have been defined based in the specific functionality under test. These are the Section 6 test cases that they basically verify the transmitter characteristics of the LTE device. Section 7 test cases, they test the receiver of the user equipment. Section 8 test cases, this group of test cases exercise the receiving performance characteristics of the device under test. And finally, Section 9 tests, which verify the reporting capabilities of the LTE device. Let's talk a bit more about them. So the RF test requirements in Section 6, the transmitter, essentially verify different aspects of the UE transmitter capabilities. These, as a summary, these are to verify that the UE maximum output power is not too high or not too low, and the dynamic changes of the output power of the UE are performed properly. Also, another type of test is the one that measures the quality of the transmitted modulated signals, and in most of the cases they use global in-channel measurement algorithms defined in the standard, such as EDM measurement. To capture also another type of measurements is to capture both possible unwanted spurious emission and intermodulation products in the UE transmitter. Nowadays, in LTE Release 8 and Release 9, there are currently 26 test cases defined for this chapter 6. In terms of Chapter 7 RF test requirements, these are basically tests that verify the receiver capabilities of the UE, including receiver sensitivity and maximum input level, which verify the UE's ability to receive data under conditions of low and high signal levels, respectively. ACS, or adjacent channel selectivity, as the ability of the UE to receive data in the presence of signals in the adjacent channel. UE capabilities to receive wanted signals in the presence of different type of unwanted interferers, and the verification of the possible effects of the own UE emission in its own receiver. The number of test cases defined in the Section 7, in this Section 7 for receiver tests for both Release 8 and Release 9 versions are 9 test cases only, and actually there are no test cases in Release 9, all of them are in Release 8. In terms of performance requirements, Chapter 8, these test cases verify the ability of the UE to properly demodulate, maintaining a certain throughput level or block error rate, the data transmitted in different downlink channels and under several channel conditions. In this test, the performance of the UE receiver is tested in different transmission modes, including open loop and closed loop multiplexing modes, single antenna or multiple antennas, which is basically transmit diversity, and as well as MIMO scenarios, MIMO 2x2 and MIMO 4x2. In FDD, in Release 8 and Release 9, for Section 8, there are around 24 test cases. In TDD and 29 sorry, 24 in FDD and 29 in TDD. And finally, Chapter 9 test cases that report channel state information, so basically the quality of the channel. And the purpose of these test cases is to exercise different reporting capabilities that the UE have, and in the presence of different fading and noise conditions present in the communication. These tests essentially cover reporting of CQI, the channel quality indicator, PMI, the pre-coding matrix indicator, or RI, the rank indicator. The main concept for these test cases is the CQI reporting, which basically allows the UE to inform the network about the quality of the channel as it is perceived by the device and take the appropriate actions to improve it, if possible. In FDD, in Release 8 and Release 9, for this Chapter 9, there are around 14 test cases, and the same for TDD, another 14 test cases. So we have reviewed the conformant test cases extracted from the PGPP, the different type of RF test cases, how they are structured in chapters. But for an LTE device manufacturer, normally conformant tests are not enough. So let's see some of the issues that LTE vendors must face during their design and verification phase. So, for example, one comment is that manufacturers are developing an LTE device, and any bugs on this device will cost millions. So probably some of these comments are familiar for some of you that are listening to this webcast. Second comment can be that they need to verify that everything is working before producing the device, both also protect for present and future requirements. The current test specs only cover a subset of all possible parameters combination, so the standard tests do not seem to be enough for verifying completely in the design and verification stage. If we will need to develop their own test cases, so it's a need in the manufacturer to develop their own tests that are going to require the dedicated development team, so a lot of effort. And also it's important that when they run the test, they have to be sure that these tests are, the results provided for this test are confident enough. And also they need, at the end of the day, to verify compliance to conformance specification as well to certify the solution. So at the end of the day, these are just some of the needs that manufacturers may have for design verification tests. So let's see how design verification RF tests specifically could be a solution for these needs. So conformal tests usually define minimum levels of performance for the UE to be compliant to the standard. So only a subset of the core functionalities is verified, and the parameterization of the test is limited to only a few values. However, designers are very often interested in verifying how far their implementation can go in terms of parameters like sensitivity, adjacent channel selectivity, spurious response, etc. So design verification test solutions provide tools to both create and customize tests beyond the test purposes, parameters, and limits defined in the conformant test cases. Besides, DV solution should provide traceability with the conformant test in order to allow execution of pre-conformance test scenarios and offer users with enough confidence in the test results obtained. In the next slides, we are going to see a couple of examples about how taking conformant test case as a reference, the user could define a different type of design and verification test. In the first example, we are going to use the Section 7 test case, 7.3, the reference sensitivity test as the base conformant test cases. 7.3 essentially measures the capacity of the UE to receive data under conditions of low power levels transmitted by the network in the downlink and within ideal channel conditions. That means no fading or noise is present in the communication. UEs not meeting the sensitivity requirements will definitively affect the actual coverage of the network cells. As the test case has been defined in the 36521-1, it is necessary to transmit downlink data in full allocation conditions, and the minimum throughput requirement for this test case, that means the PAX failure criteria, is a 95% of data throughput, or as it is also handled, a concept is 5% of block error rate. Let's see how we can create a margin search test case by using this sensitivity measurement as a reference. So with this DV test case and using the sensitivity test as the reference measurements, the transmitted cell power is decreased until the throughput falls below 95%. So the decreasing step can be configured. In this example, is 1 dB each step. So you can see that 1 dB is getting down, and but also other algorithms of fine-tuning search can be added as well. So we will see. In the example of the slides, the downlink power has reached minus 118. Let me use here. So it's here. dBm, the throughput has decreased down to 70%. So in here, we are going to use, in this example, we are going to use fine-tune algorithms in order to narrow down the value that basically is just above the 95%. So in order to do so, the downlink power decreasing step is changed to 0.1 dBm steps until the measured throughput gets below 95%. And the sensitivity margin is found, which basically is exactly this value, and this will be the sensitivity margin, minus 117.3 dBm, 0.3 dBm. So at the end of the day, these graphs will start showing how exactly this margin search or the margin of the sensitivity of the device can be found. This can be very useful for a device manufacturer to know basically the performance margins of their devices, since at the end of the day, the conformance test case just only verify a 13 downlink signal level with what is the throughput measure. So in here, by stripping all these downlink signal levels, the margin can be found. Let's see another example. This second example is based in Chapter 8 set of tests, the performance test cases, in particular H.2.x performance test cases that essentially verify the UE's ability to correctly receive the transmitted data in the shared channel under different fading environments and signal-to-noise ratios, including MIMO 2x2 and 4x2 scenarios. This demodulating capacity is measured using data throughput limits for a specific reference measurement channel, RMC, being used. Let's see how, by means of modifying some parameters of any of these conformance test cases, users can define and design verification set of tests. This example in particular uses the shared channel demodulation performance test cases, and instead of exercising just one single CFI, the control format indicator value, it is defined in the 36521-1 in the test spec, new test steps are created in order to run the same test, but using all the possible allowed CFI values. So CFI is an indicator telling how many of OFDM symbols are going to be used in the control channel at each subframe. So by allocating more symbols in the control channel, the network is capable of managing more UEs, but increases the symbol rate at each receiver of each UE and produce certain level of stress on the receiver performance of the UE. So this has been another example of how users can customize and parameterize already defined conformance test cases in order to exercise devices beyond the frameworks and limits defined in the standards. Let's go now to the last section of the presentation, which is focused in FE advanced carrier aggregation test. So let's review some basic concepts. Carrier aggregation was defined as a solution for increasing the peak data rates required to support more advanced mobile services and applications. So its main motivation is to achieve wide bandwidth transmission and facilitate a more efficient use of the current quite fragmented spectrum. All this is managed by aggregating several LTE carriers up to 5 components in both the downlink and uplink, which are compatible, each of these carriers, with Release 8 and Release 9 LTE features. And all of this in order to reach up to 100 megahertz bandwidth. These carriers can be deployed under the following configuration. So intra-band contiguous, so all the component carriers are allocated side by side in the same band. Intra-band no contiguous, that the carriers are allocated in the same band but not together with each other. And the interband carrier aggregation deployment, which basically are component carriers allocated in different bands. In terms of conformant test cases defined for carrier aggregation, all current test cases at this moment have been defined in Release 10 version, along with just few bands combination. In Release 11, which is the current version of the test spec, few more bands combination have been defined, and more test cases might be defined in future versions. In fact, there is a Round 5 meeting this week, and I heard that there are some new test cases that might be developed in the following months. Until now, test cases have been defined for interband configurations without uplink carrier aggregation, which basically means that we have 2 component carriers in the downlink in different LTE bands, this is interband, and just 1 uplink component carrier in the primary band. Besides, test cases have been defined for intra-band contiguous with and without uplink carrier aggregation, so with 1 or 2 uplink carriers. And finally, in terms of the number of test cases defined, the current figures are 56 RF test cases, 16 RRM, and 36 protocols. But again, these quantities might be increased in the upcoming months, since I heard that the Round 5 meeting the Round 5 group is working in adding new test cases. In terms of the specified bands at this moment, in the slide you can see the one described in the latest version of the 36521-1. And as you can observe, the biggest volume are interband carrier aggregation combinations, which are all FDD bands. In terms of intraband, just 2 bands in FDD and 3 bands in TDD have been defined up to this point. Let's see a bit more in detail about the structure of the RF conformant test cases defined for carrier aggregation. Test cases have been defined in Chapter 6, remember, transmitter tests, Chapter 7, receiver tests, and Chapter 8, performance tests. It seems that by now we don't have carrier aggregation test cases in Chapter 9, although they might be defined in future releases. Some of these test cases that are already in place at this moment are not fully defined. So if you go into the test specs, you will see that some of them have missing parameters or missing tolerances. So that basically means that theoretically these test cases that are incomplete cannot be validated yet and cannot be used for certification purposes until their full definition. Per section, in the 36521-1, most of Chapter 6 test cases are intraband contiguous with 2 uplink carriers, and there is only 1 interband test case without uplink carrier aggregation. In Section 7, essentially, the same test cases have been defined for different CA scenarios, so we have the same test cases for interband, for intraband with 2 uplinks, and with intraband with just 1 uplink. And finally, in Chapter 8, as has happened in Release 8 and Release 9, there are specific test cases for FDD and TDD bands, including both interband and intraband configurations. And as I guess you were expecting, these tests includes MIMO, fading, and noise test scenarios. Let's have a look into the main carrier aggregation test challenges. So as we did in Release 8 and Release 9, let's review some of them. So performing carrier aggregation tests require test platforms that have to be able to emulate multiple cells and carriers and component carriers and support multiple bands combination, as you have seen in previous slides. So CA-capable test platform must be able to analyze multiple chains in both the transmission and the reception path simultaneously and in different frequencies. And specifically, the challenge scenarios are the performance scenarios where you have to support setups, test setups, including multiple cells, faders, and noise generators and combine all of them. So specifically, MIMO 4x2 scenario, this is quite challenging from the testing point of view, as you can appreciate in the block diagram. So this is a typical 4x2 scenario with added noise as well. So it's a quite complex setup. Finally, there are several UE antenna configurations that have been defined in the standards, so the test systems have to adapt their testing antenna interfaces to these different configurations. So in fact, 3 different UE antenna configuration has been defined in the standard. So that means that test platform might face different type of antenna configurations in the device under test. So to wrap up this presentation, let me briefly introduce the Agilent LTE conformance and design verification test solutions and how these platforms can deal with the test challenges presented in this webcast. So Agilent LTE conformance and design verification test solutions for RF, RRM, and protocol test cases are all based in the same core equipment. This is the T2010A LTE wireless communication test set. This instrument supports up to 2 independent LTE cells in just this one box solution, integrating for each cell and inside the same box channel emulation capabilities up to MIMO 4x2 and noise generation. These systems can be software upgradable to support RF, RRM, and protocol test cases, and specifically this one box solution is a validated configuration in GCF and PTCRB. Besides, this box is nowadays ready to support carrier aggregation test cases with 2 component carriers up to MIMO 4x2 each, all of them in the same box, with independent transmitter and receiver from ends to support all the different UE antenna configurations for carrier aggregation. Specifically for LTE RF testing, the Agilent T4010S integrates into a single 1.6 meter rack, the T2010A box, with just the following 3 additional boxes. We have the Agilent MXA signal analyzer for out-of-channel measurements, the Agilent PSG signal generator for blocking and intermodulation text, and the Agilent T1250A smart switching unit, which provides filtering capabilities for all LTE, FDD, and CDD bands and RF connectivity between the different instrumentation. This one rack configuration provides 100% conformance and design verification test coverage for LTE RF tests, and nowadays is the most compact LTE RF conformance test solution in the market. Well, this is the end of my presentation. Hope you have enjoyed it. So let's go for some questions and answers.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you for your presentation. Yes, we have some time left now for the question and answer session. Before we start, I would like to tell people who has joined later during the call that your presentation is available after the call, and we will send to everybody, we will send you an email with the link to the copy of these slides, and also you have the possibility to download the recording of this event. So for all of those who joined a bit later, you can also listen to the full recording afterwards. Now, another point to remind you is about the survey. Agilent holds a lot of free webcasts throughout the year, and we really appreciate if you can take a few minutes to fill out the feedback form which appears when you close this WebEx session. Okay, now to the question and answer. Again, if you have a question, enter it in the chat window on the lower right corner. And if your question requires a bit of research, or if we run out of time, then we are committed to get back to you by email later. So now, Angel, here is the first question for you. In the GCF or PTCRB database, which test categories are possible?
Okay, so in terms of test case categories, both GCF and PTCRB database share the same categories. In most of the cases, there are some slight difference, but most of these are category A, that is one test case is mandatory for certification. So that means that a manufacturer, when go into the database and see test cases for a particular band that have category A, this means that this test case is mandatory. So we have category B, which means validated but with exceptions. We have category C, that the test case is validated but not applicable for certification yet due to the war item is not active or the ban is not active. Remember the certification entry criteria when I mentioned in the slide that the operator have to declare some pilot network. We have category D, that the test case is downgraded for whatever reasons. We have category P. We saw that in the slide, that the test case has not been validated yet by any platform and can only be validated at meetings. And this is just normally happen when a test case is recently introduced. And then we have another category, which is N, when the test case is not applicable in one particular band. In PTCRB, there is one particular category, which is category E. That is when a new validation of one test case happens in a PBG meeting during more or less 90 days. A test case has to remain in this category until it passes into category A, approved in the PTCRB meeting, which is the most general one, and then it can be approved by all the PTCRB operators. And then can pass into mandatory for certification if this test case is present in a PTCRB lab that can run this certification.
Thank you, Anke. The second question for you. You have talked about TPAC in GCF, but did not mention anything similar in PTCRB. Is there any kind of requirements in order for certification to begin for a specific test case or group of test case?
Oh, it's a good question. So yeah, basically GCF has very strict requirements in order to move one test case as mandatory for certification. In PTCRB, this is not the case. So that because all the test cases, for example, for release H and release 9, for release H, for RF, RRM, and protocol, for all the bands are all grouped together in the RFT 76, as I mentioned. So basically what happens is that one test case, one test case gets new, so it's in category P, and one test platform validates this test case, so in one PBG meeting, and then this test case, as I mentioned in the previous answer, stands for 90 days in category E, and after these 90 days, these test cases, in order to move into mandatory for certification, have to be approved by all the operators, PTCRB operators, and have to be commercially available in any test platform, and also have to be available in at least one independent PTCRB lab. So that's the main key requirement for PTCRB to have one particular test case as mandatory for certification. It is also interesting to mention that the most restricted requirements in PTCRB are more related to laboratories than validation of test cases. So the accreditation of a laboratory in PTCRB requires that, specifically for LTE, that the PTCRB lab have to be a minimum coverage of a 50% of all the already validated LTE test cases in RF, RRM, and protocol, which is in all the bands, which is a huge amount of test cases. So it have to be this lab have to be platforms and capabilities to cover at minimum this 50% of all the validated test cases for LTE.
Oh, thank you. Very good and very detailed. And here's another one in the list regarding device certification. When submitting for certification an LTE device supporting multiple bands, is it necessary to execute all conformance test cases in every band?
Yeah, this is a very common question. It's something that changes very often, but basically depends on each particular test case. So PTCRB and GCF define whenever a new test case is introduced from the 3GPP spec into the PTCRB or GCF database, they define a special field that somehow indicate whether the test case has to be executed in all supported bands or only in the main band supported. For example, in GCF, RF test cases from section 6 and 7, let me recall, RRM test cases from section 9, this shall be run for each band supported by the device. So if we have a multi-band device that supports many different bands, all the different section 6, 7, and section 9 for RRM test cases have to be executed once per band. But for example, all the other RF test cases, chapter 8 and 9, and all the other RRM test cases, and all the protocol test cases, except for just few exceptions, shall be run only once in a band that chosen by the device manufacturer, which at the end of the day can reduce a lot the overhead of the certification process.
Thank you, Angel. Another one is related to design verification test. Question is, you have talked about design verification RF test cases. Are there similar DV testing needs for RRM and protocol test cases?
Of course, although do not have the same level of importance, I would say, in my honest opinion, I see in the industry. Manufacturers, in any case, might want to exercise certain additional network conditions in RRM tests beyond the configuration defined in the specs as happened in RF. For example, including other different fading profiles or set more restricted time limits when performing service selections or handovers in order to see basically or to put more restrictions into the pass-fail criteria. And in protocol, it also might be interesting to perform other signaling scenarios or test some, for example, invalid behaviors, which basically means that to check that the mobile device behaves properly when the signaling received is not the right one, so when the actions, the commands are not the right one. So see how the UE behave in these invalid scenarios, in this invalid situation. So I think that yes, there should be need in the market. I will focus more in the RF based in the industry need, but RRM and protocol have also a space for DV testing as well.
Good, thank you. Let's look at some future testing. A question related to LTE Advanced. Which are the upcoming specification plans in terms of LTE Advanced carrier aggregation for release 11 and release 12?
Good question. The thing is that this is changing very, very frequently over the last months, and nowadays it is not clear whether new features will be included in the current release of the test spec, this is the release 11, or just maybe postponed to the next one. For example, that happened in release 8 and release 9. So release 9 is basically all the enhancement that couldn't be fit into the release 8 specification. But it seems to be clear that there are some ongoing tasks at the 3GPP work groups in terms of adding few more new test cases in RF, RRM, and protocol over the current carrier aggregation scenario that I mentioned, the interband and the intraband contiguous with 1 and 2 uplinks. And also, as I mentioned, that is a round 5 meeting this week, and it seems that new requirements for interband carrier aggregation scenario with 2 uplink carriers. So remember that the one that is now in place is with just 1 uplink, but it seems that new requirements for 2 uplinks in interband scenario is being defined now, and also new cases for non-contiguous intraband is also being defined. So remember that nowadays release 11 only cover contiguous intraband carrier aggregation, but it seems that new test cases for non-contiguous are currently under definition. And also, I have seen some first steps in the definition of new bands combination, and also obviously the respective test requirement, because every band combination will have the respective test requirement as well. This is what I can see that is coming in carrier aggregation for release 11 and release 12.
Okay, thank you. It looks that we have now spent all the time on the question and took the time to use for it. We have reached the top of the hour of the webcast as it was scheduled. Thank you very much, Anke, for your presentation today, and thanks to everybody attending today's webcast, which was titled "Your LTE Devices Need to Pass Conformance Tests. Now what?" A link to the slides and on-demand version of this presentation will be emailed to you within a few days, so you have the chance to review again if you may have missed something, or if you want to check again this material. And if you have any questions about anything of the material, you can also reach Angel directly via email. His email address is angel_romero@agilent.com. If you are interested in other...
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, Anke, thank you. And then I just wanted to mention, if you are interested in other webcasts, you can also find them on the web, www.agilent.com/find/events. So thank you again. Thank you for joining. Have a great day.